do a piece of career section. We always love it when military veterans come on stream and talk, and just kind of looking through our chat list of users who are folks in sitting in chat right now. I can recognize a couple of our usual military veterans. So thank you to our military veterans who are tuning into chat, and thank you for your service. And so this is one of the big benefits that we love to have you on is to speak specifically to a lot of these veterans. And so with that, one of the big things that I kind of wanted to talk to you about, right, is you started your Air Force career as a fighter pilot, from what you and I talked about, right?
Yes. Yeah. So 33 years and 28 years. The first 28 was flying F-15s and then working my way up through the various commands until I was the wing commander at Kadena Air Base in Okinawa, Japan, which is our largest combat wing. And then one day I get the call that says, "Hey, it's ET." It's from my 4-star boss. "It's time for you to change jobs, and you're going to go to PACOM, and you're going to be the J6. And I go, "The J what?" And, that's why I said that's all the cool people work, IT and cyber. And so that was what that was the 4-star admiral who his name was Tim Keating at the time, who ran PACOM. And for everybody, United States Pacific Command at the time, it's called Indo-PACOM now, but it was Pacific Command. And that was a joint headquarters. So all the services were there. As a Navy admiral was the commander. And his job was all the U.S. forces in the Pacific, as he likes to say, over 52% of the Earth's surface, et cetera. And he was the first 4-star combatant commander that said, we have to stop looking at this IT and cyber as a support function, right? I can have forces spread over 52% of the Earth's surface, but if I can't command and control them, right? If I can't issue orders and know they get to the right people and they don't get to the wrong people, that they aren't modified en route, that I don't have a picture that I can trust, et cetera, then I'm at strategic risk. And so his way of addressing that was to bring an operator into a position that had traditionally been held by a communicator or signal officer or that sort of thing. And so that's how I got into that role.
So when you made the comment earlier about when you first went to go work for General Alexander at Director NSA, what was your kind of impression when you kind of got thrust into this cyber role, or what was your perception coming from being a pilot going into cyber? What was your perception of cyber at this point in your career?
Well, it's interesting. When I first went in, it was at U.S. Pacific Command in, I guess, 2009, and my first meeting with my new boss, Admiral Keating, it's when you go in, "Hey, sir, how you doing? How's the family? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, what am I supposed to do here?" And it was, "Okay, I want you to operationalize cyber." And I said, "Okay, I'm ready to take notes. What do you mean by that?" And he goes, "That's it, operationalize cyber," right? And so what his view was, it goes back to some things we talked about earlier, some of the things that Colonel Sparks is working to bring into the schoolhouse down there, is he wanted an operational approach, right? He wanted it to be part of operations. And I think he thought that my job was to make those poor J6 people realize how they fit in. And very quickly, I figured out that the J6 people weren't the problem. It was all of the other people, the planners and the operators, right? They would get frustrated that, these people couldn't come in the room and they start talking in picowatts per fortnight. Why can't you talk in terms relevant to me?
Did you just say per fortnight?
Yeah, you never call me in the room unless the video teleconference doesn't work. You don't call me in the room because I need to be part of the plan or part of the execution. And so what I found my role, frankly, being over the next 5 years, was I spent much more time talking to airplane drivers, ship drivers, infantrymen, the operators, and telling them, you need to get smarter about this. You need to bring these people into these planning things. You need to bring them into the execution. They are more than smart enough to understand your priorities, et cetera, but you have to make them part of the process. And if you think about it, Neil, that's exactly what you see happening in the private sector over the last 10 years, albeit I would say slower from my experience and frankly, there's a fair amount of, I don't know what the polite term is, of eyewash, right? Where, oh, no, my CIO is part of my senior leadership team, right? But they really aren't looked at the same way, And so being able to, for these strategic senior military leaders, to get them to understand that they had to get smart enough about this, that they can provide the right direction and they make the risk decisions, as opposed to, this young enlisted person who's going to make the best decision they can. but they are not informed by the strategic priorities, right? And same thing in the business sector. And so, what I found was my niche was being able to translate between the two groups. I could take the technical, and I learned enough about the technical that I could be more than conversant with my peers in the SIX world, and I could then translate that to the ops folks. And then I found the same thing to be important as I talk to boards and business leaders and that sort of thing is be able to put it in business terms and help them understand, how do you think about managing this risk?
I think that translates very well into some of the challenges that I saw right when I was at the 39th IOS as we were building the FTU there for cyber was, we were constantly, challenged and struggled to think and talk like pilots as we built out our cyber curriculum and pilots. I think to your point, right? We were dealing with pilots. You were talking about ship commanders and things like that. They're used to seeing those kinetic effects, and so you had to be able to convince a pilot that you could hack into a surface-to-air missile and it wouldn't take them down. But the problem was that they were used to seeing that boom and that's how they knew that surface-to-air missile worked. And so basically, how did you bridge that gap there? Like, what was it that you found that helped you bridge that gap between that communication problem?
Well, the first thing I had to do was I had to convince, let's call them the cyber people or the technical people, that you're not lowering yourself by learning to put your work into operational terms, okay? Because the fact of the matter is, these ops people run the world, right? And so you have got to, and frankly, that's what should happen, right? Is, well, it's so much different. It's all that. I said, yeah, but when you bring it up to the operational and strategic level, right? What you're fundamentally doing is you're trying to generate effects that cause the enemy commander to make decisions favorable to you, right? And the fact that you can generate some of those in cyberspace and some of those in physical space, that is very important. That's why you need soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines on these staffs. So they each bring their tactical expertise, but they all have to be able to translate that into plans and operations speak, right? And there's specific ways that you do these things. And so what you have to do is first bring your language into that language, right? And once they understand that you can fit in there and be a contributing part of that, then you can start easing them into the discussion. Because to your point, they need to understand things like when we were going into Libya, remember we had the actions in Libya? I still remember talking to the commander over there on my little secure video teleconference, and where's all the cool cyber stuff to take out the SAMs? And I had to explain to this person that this stuff works at light speed, over fiber and all that kind of stuff. I said, but it takes years to prep and understand and get in position and all of that stuff. And guess what? Something may change because an IT guy flipped a switch that makes my cool thing not work. And so just like the tanker might show up and we can't get all the airplanes to the target, or a bomb might hang or whatever, we have to have contingencies, and we have to understand what risks we're taking and all of those things. But fundamentally, I had to work with the cyber people to get them to get over the fact that they are not going to learn your technical language as a start, right? You've got to fit into that planning process if you want to be a contributor. And then over time, and you see it happening now, is people are going to learn more and more about that so that they can make the right decisions as a commander. And so that's kind of what I saw.
If we take that same concept, do you think we have the same problem in the CFO, the CEO, the CIO, or even the board tower?
Right. Yeah. 100%. And I think it's almost worse in the business sector now because, with everything is SaaS, right? That, all of these different business leaders, shadow IT, right? I can go out and buy these apps. I can start using these things. I can start doing all this. I can do things on my tablet, all that stuff is that you can bring even more risk to the mission by people that don't understand whatever benefit they're getting out of this technology. There's a risk to it, right? Yet they aren't necessarily in a position to judge that. And equally bad, right, is the CIO or CISO who's Mr. or Miss No, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is how do you get to that right balance where you can take advantage of this technology in the right way, but you're understanding the risk. How do I make this as seamless as possible, but making sure that as a business leader, I understand it's not always going to be as convenient as I want. How do I understand as a company, what am I setting as a risk profile with regards to technology, and how am I going to enforce that and hold people accountable? So yes, all the dynamics I saw in the government along those lines there's complete analogies in the business sector from what I've seen.
So as somebody who's been very successful at communicating, that that need to folks who aren't inherently knowledgeable in our cyberspace, what are the three things for folks who are watching the stream right now, if they wanted to take away three things that they could do tomorrow at work to improve their communication to their non-cyber leaders upwards, what would those three things be?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would do is try to figure out, does my company have an established risk framework, right? And the bigger the company is, the more likely you're having. If you're working in a public company, a publicly owned company, you definitely have a statement of what those risks are. So the first thing is understanding, what's the risk profile of the company, and what are they concerned with? I think the next thing you've got to do is you have got to work your way into meetings and forums and venues that you wouldn't normally be at, right? Whether it's to be part of a sales meeting or asked to be part of a meeting of the logistics team or whatever, just to sit in and listen and start to absorb and understand what are the issues that they're dealing with, what are the business issues that they're dealing with, what are the challenges and those sorts of things that they're dealing with. And then you can go to number three, is to start building those one-on-one personal relationships with those business leaders. Because it's like anything else we do, Neil. It's about trust, right? If I can build a personal relationship with you, if you're the guy that runs the manufacturing floor, right? Or worse, better, I don't know, you're the guy in the hospital that buys all the IoT devices, right?
Right.
Then I've got to form a personal relationship with you so that you trust that I understand that you have a job to do, you have a mission to do, and that I am there to help you do that, right? And so if I can understand kind of the risk tolerance of the company, how it looks at it, if I can get fluent in these lines of business and understand what their priorities are, what their challenges are, then that sets the stage for me to start building a trustful relationship with you, such that we can start making decisions that are best for the company.
So with that in mind, I mean, you highlighted some fantastic skills, and we've got an unknown number of folks who are sitting in stream right now, probably ranging from elite sauce hackers that are probably working on 0 days right now, to some folks who are probably more on the leadership management, risk management side of the house. It sounds like you're describing people skills and soft skills. Are you saying that that's something that we seem to be lacking in our industry?
I'll tell you what, I've come to the conclusion, I don't like calling them soft skills because I think they're hard skills. And I don't think that these skills are unique to the technical community. I think that they're probably more prevalent in the technical community, but I still go back and primarily put it on, back in the military, I put it on the ops guys, and in the business world, I put it on those senior business leaders, because I can sit there as the tech guy and knock on the door all day long, and you're not going to let me in the meeting, right? There has to be some pull, right? There has to be some encouragement. There has to be some draw and some acknowledgement that we need ET in this meeting, because what he has knowledge of is important to our business, right? And so there has to be a push from the technical folks, but the pull is really what it takes to bring this over the line. And I think the issue of the hard skills versus soft skills, as people call them, and this, is that when we grow up in the military, true on the enlisted side, even more true on the officer side, is you don't move up because of your technical skills. They certainly help, but you get paid for leadership, right? When I was a wing commander at Kadena, yeah, I had airplanes and stuff like that, but I had 1,500 civil engineers. I had a 500 bed hospital. what I got paid for was being able to lead organizations, right? And so, so what I've seen, back to the pilot, let's call it the pilot hacker analogy, is that having worked with more and more of these folks, is they're a lot like fighter pilots, right? All they want to do is fly, right?
Right.
I don't want to be a team lead. I don't want to be a manager, but I want to bitch about not being able to control anything we're doing, right? So, it is about leadership, right? And you have to have people with technical skills who want to be leaders. And being a leader is about what people refer to as soft skills, but I don't think they're soft. They're hard. It's empathy, it's vision, it's collaboration, it's all of those things that it takes to draw the best out of your team, that's required for good leadership.
I think that's probably the greatest quote ever right there is they want to do all the cool stuff and just bitch about how it's getting done. I think that's
Right.
that's going to go down in history. So
But we could do a whole nother 2 hours on leadership. So.
Right, for sure.
Okay.
So we do got a question in chat. What were your experiences with Intel in the military, and where do you think Intel fits in the private sector cyber industry?
My experience with Intel in the military was that I never ran into anybody in the intelligence field who wasn't a great American and was trying to do absolutely the best they can. What I think has happened in the Intel community is that technology has gotten to the point where we can collect up all sorts of stuff, which goes back to my thing about the J2 would vomit information on my desk, right? Here's all the bad stuff that's going on, right? And so what I think we need to do with the intelligence is get a closer linkage between the operations side, right? Is what information do I really need to be able to do my job? And let's go target that and find that and sort that out. And so the same thing applies on the cyber side of it. So I think this intelligence component, and certainly all large companies do have threat intelligence experts and that sort of thing. What I think my admittedly limited observation of the folks I know in that field is they still struggle to be brought into the fold to the point where they can effectively really target the intelligence in a way that really helps the company. And frankly, a lot of the intelligence, I think, is back to kind of that ISAC level. We're sharing a lot of let's just call it commodity intelligence, right? But if you're really going to be valuable as an intelligence analyst, you're going to show how this really applies to this client or this customer or our SOC, and why this needs to be prioritized, and how can I make this actionable. So I think that threat intel definitely has a place in the private sector industry. But again, if they're not trained to apply their craft very specifically to the problems and allow you to prioritize the resources, then they're not going to do any good by just, every day spitting out, here's the latest bad stuff that's happening.
Very well said. Very well said. So we're coming towards the end of the stream, sir. I've got one more question for you, and then I want to turn it over to Chad. I want Chad to make sure that they're aware, right? You've got a very distinguished two-star general here, worked at some of the highest levels of the defense of our nation for Cyber Command. Fantastic opportunity, rare opportunity to ask somebody any question that you want, either about the news that we talked about today or about career advice and things like that. And so I'd encourage everybody to take that opportunity as well. I think my last question for you, sir. Given that we've got a lot of folks listening to the stream that are either thinking about, in cyber or in some of the kind of their, transitioning phases, either in the military, transitioning out to the private sector, if you were to reach out to them and think about, what type of advice would you give both technical and non-technical folks that are transitioning out of the service and into the private sector, what would be your, I like to do top threes. What would be your top three pieces of advice that you'd give to folks that are on that transition path in cyber?
Yeah, I would say I've got five, but I'm going to narrow it down to three. And one of them is more of a life advice thing. But I think the number one thing is that I didn't believe this when I first left, but it didn't take me very long to figure out that everything that you learn in the military about particularly leadership, teamwork, team building, you know, taking care of the people on your team, all of that is equally important in the private sector and will be valued. It's just, I would say people don't see that as frequently in the private sector, and they don't know how important it is. And that's a gross, I got it. It's a gross stereotype, but I've been out here 6 years now, and I firmly believe that leadership and team building is undervalued in the private sector. It's not emphasized enough. It's not rewarded enough. It's not effectively trained enough. So everything you learned in the military along those lines, bring that with you. Number two is, we become very loyal because we can't move around whenever we want. And so that's a valuable thing to bring with you, but also realize that you have a lot of options, right? And so when you go into a company, do your best. You're going to be loyal. You're going to do but other opportunities are going to come along. Don't stay in a hostile work environment. Don't stay in a place that doesn't value you. Don't stay in a place where you don't like the ethics and morals of the company. There are other places that you can work. So when you go out, be prepared to be mobile and always have that aperture open for other opportunities, because people expect that. They do not look bad at you by saying, oh, there's a better opportunity. I can go and grow here. I can do something different. They don't look at that the wrong way. And then the third thing I would offer, which maybe is a little off base, but most people leaving the military are going to have an opportunity to make probably more money than they were making in the military. Do not get yourself very quickly used to a lifestyle that relies on the money you're making at the first job you get. Because what that can do is, back to point two, if you don't like where you're working, but now you can't afford to give up that money because you've gotten used to the lifestyle, then that restricts your ability to take advantage of other opportunities. So especially with enlisted folks, it's not unusual to go out and make twice what you were making before, okay? But give yourself some time to get used to that lifestyle. You were probably relatively happy before. Now you got twice as much. But if you get yourself committed to a job that you can't afford to walk away from, then you really start restricting your options. So that's my three.
Awesome. All three of those are awesome, and I don't want to take up too much time, but I can completely agree on the lack of value in the private sector for the teamwork and the leadership skills. That's that was I would admit that was a shocker one for me as well. Another question in chat. What advice do you have for those that are just starting out in their career? I presume that's just starting out in their career in cyber.
Yeah, I think there's kind of two roads to go. There's the formal education road, and then there's the the certifications and that sort of thing. And I think those both have their value. I would say that I think the last time I looked at this statistic was companies say that 70% of the people that they initially get on board require 6 months of on-the-job training before they're useful. So wherever you get your training, and I'll go to my favorite place, which is RIT, the Rochester Institute of Technology. We've got several folks out of there, and if we had another show, I could tell you about my connection there. But RIT has really done a good job, I think, of taking what they formally teach in school and using co-ops and that sort of thing to get people real-world experience and then bring them back so that when they walk into a company, they are ready to go on day one. So look for places as you're training or getting your education to get real world experience so you can walk in on day one and be productive. And then I would be careful about trying to get too many certifications before you realize, because you've seen the people that got 27 behind their name. It's like going to Harvard, right? 2 years out of Harvard, people really want to know, what can you actually do for me? I'm not as concerned that you went to Harvard, right? So there's certainly some core certifications that are probably important, but don't go chasing those before you've worked for a while and figured out which of these is really going to help me get to where I want to go.
I love that stat that you talk about getting the hands-on experience, and I do know the statistic you're talking about where HR companies are looking for more folks to have that hands-on experience. For folks who are literally just starting out, do you, when you're looking at resumes where you sit at IronNet and you're looking to hire folks, if you're looking at a fresh guy, but he's got like a home lab, he's done a ton of self-learning, and he's able to prove that, through passing through your technical chops, would you consider that self-initiative and that self-learning valuable hands-on experience?
Yeah, absolutely is. yeah, for our technical folks, we absolutely, look for people that have that. At the same time, we learned that we had to introduce some fairly rigorous technical tests, if you will, because people tend not to necessarily be able to back up what they say on their resume. So I would just encourage you to be generous with what's on your resume, but be prepared to back it up. And so, but yeah, definitely we're looking for people self-starters. And then, you know, for us, we're trying to approach cybersecurity in a different way. We fundamentally believe it's a different way. And so we've also found that sometimes getting people that have been in the business a long time, they aren't as open to doing things in a different way. And so having people that are open and proactive and want to contribute in a meaningful way, I think all those are important.
For up-to-the-minute cybersecurity news, make sure you follow and subscribe to the Cyber and Security channel on Twitch and YouTube. Also, make sure you turn on those notifications so that you know when we go live.